lot of people are dealing with quarantine by going through some classic TV and film series. Unfortunately, many have awakened to the harsh reminder that not everything has aged as well for a multitude of reasons. Whether it be the inability to separate the art from the artist due to cultural insensitivity, homophobia, transphobia, or something else, these movies did not stand the test of time. So before this intro gets old, let's get into it. Number 10 in our countdown is one that was recently removed from HBO, I believe, and the president complained about it. Number 10, Gone with the Wind. Tell us about Gone with the Wind, Jake.
Speaking of the Southern belles in the room, Gone with the Wind is considered to be an ambitious movie that changed cinema forever. But that doesn't mean that it hasn't faced some criticism over the years. Many critics and audiences have called out the film for glossing over the harsh realities of slavery while romanticizing the Confederacy. Going with the Wind was actually pulled from HBO Max, as you had said, and then was put back on it with an introductory disclaimer that discusses the historical context of the film. Warner Brother had pulled the movie a few weeks ago, citing that it needed to address its racial depictions. In the intro of the video, which now plays on HBO Max before the movie starts, Turner Classic Movies host and film scholar Jacqueline Stewart discusses why the 1939 epic drama should be viewed in its original form, contextualized, and discussed. Many might not know that the movie actually had the U.S.'s first Black Academy Award winner, Hattie McDaniel, who won the award for Best Supporting Actress in 1940, and she famously wasn't able to attend the awards due to segregation. Wow. Dodd, frankly, do you give a damn if this movie's still alive?
No, I don't. Let it be Gone with the Wind, if you will. I go the same way when they talk about, especially in like film history, when they talk about Birth of a Nation. And I get how Birth of a Nation was important to film history, but like we fucking we shouldn't spend more time on Birth of a Nation and no time on Black Hollywood and Tulsa massacres. Like that incomplete impropriety of value when it comes to the significance of art, if you will. To me, it like Gone with the Wind should absolutely be removed from me. I don't think it stands that much of importance to relive the tropes that Gone with the Wind perpetuates. Period.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I like the contextual thing, like where they're like talking about how like, you should definitely view it in its original form and then kind of, make your opinion of it. But I also totally understand where people think it romanticizes, the Confederacy, because it does, right? And it also makes slavery look like it was fucking fun, right? Like, which is a huge thing that movies from that time period do. They make it look like it was some sort of like, hangout session in a way, and it's fucking gross. And so like I definitely think that it should be available for people to view, because I don't think that we want people to completely forget that at a time period that was okay either, right? Like, because if you don't see how terrible the things were in the past, you can't realize how far we've come in progress. And so like I don't know about completely 86ing it. I'm kind of glad HBO put it back up, but it is one of those that where like you got to go into it with some context. If it's being shown at like some kind of like Klan rally or some shit like that, like, oh my god, like you definitely like shut that shit down. Like,
and that's why I'm torn. Sorry, go ahead. Oh yeah, I'm torn because it's like, yes, we need to understand that the history's there, but at the same time, it, like you said, it sensationalized it's like the Confederacy and slavery. So a lot of people aren't like, majority of people going to watch Gone with the Wind aren't going to be like, let me think about the social commentary that's going on during this time, So they're going to watch it and then they're going to see like, oh, slavery wasn't that bad, or racism wasn't really a thing.
And that's the huge part of like I think why like it's good that HBO Max put some sort of like warning in front of it in a way, right? Yeah, because I think it does make some people maybe stop and think, but still, this one's even a harder. Like I think like statues, take them down, fuck them, get them out of here, put them in like something, right? But then like media is kind of like a different beast in my opinion. But I don't know. It's one I'm still trying to figure out myself. Well, but anyway. That's why it's number 10.
Before we hang on too long on number 10, though, I did want to say that I remember being in a history class and seeing a Bugs Bunny cartoon that my history teacher showed, and like he showed beforehand. He goes, "Hey guys, I want to let you know I'm showing this for historical context. This cartoon I'm about to show you is racist." And like we watched it, and it was a Bugs Bunny cartoon like during World War II, and it was very, very racist against Japanese people. Buck teeth and doing all kinds of stuff that was just cartoonishly racist, even for somebody that was in high school when Mind of Mencia was still on the air. I could still see that was cartoonishly racist, and even before, like it was like in like the Warner Brothers vault, and before it was shown, it was like said like, hey, this was made in a different time. We still kept it in its original context for you to understand it. And so my point is that my history teacher coming in saying, hey, this is racist, and then the screen coming up afterwards saying like, we kept this in its original context. We don't agree with the content that's here because it is racist, but we're having you here so you can see it. In its full context. Yeah. I think that would be an appropriate way to view it, but I don't think that's what HBO Max is doing right now.
Not really.
Yeah. Because then it's like, what's the point of leaving it up? Are you leaving it up to educate people? Does Gone with the Wind do that, or are you just leaving it up because it's Gone with the Wind?
That's true. Yeah, like, is it really educating anybody on anything, or is it just Gone with the Wind?
Right.
Well, number 9 in our countdown is one that also has aged poorly as well, also from a lot older area, which is Temple of Doom. Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford travels to Hollywood in the colonial area, India, but the sequel to the groundbreaking classic, Raiders of the Lost Ark, is unwatchable for some due to racially insensitive scenes. Some like the ones with the villagers eat monkeys and brains and fried bugs, racial stereotypes that appear constantly throughout the film. Almost every Kaylee Donaldson, writer for Sci-Fi Wire, said almost every element of Indian and Hindu culture depicted here is a bastardization or outright falsehood of the real people and their lives. The stereotypes created here are a part of the depressing lineage of other Indians and East Asians in pop culture. Making them insidious or untrustworthy is simply the subject of mockery. At the time of the film's release, it was banned in India because the government reportedly found the material racist and offensive. So this is something that came out during its time that was supposedly racist. Is so racist that it was banned in India in when did Temple of Doom come out again?
Like 84, maybe
84. Yeah,
somewhere in the 80s.
It was somewhere around the peak of George Lucas, or the height of George Lucas. Yeah.
Right. You've got to be pretty racist to get called out in the 80s.
You'd be surprised.
That's true. But it's definitely interesting to see, and hindsight's definitely, with 2020's hindsight, especially with things going on in India with the caste system and things of that nature, they definitely do not need any more negative stereotypes thrown around or circulated throughout our culture. It's definitely one that didn't age well, but I don't know. What do you think about some of the racial insensitivities in Temple of Doom, Kevin?
Yeah, so this is a weird one for me because I remember Temple of Doom, just Indiana Jones in general, from when I was a kid, just like watching. I forgot, I'd watch some show and then like some cartoon would reference it, and then I'd be like, "Oh, that looks cool," and because you always know the iconic look with the hat and the whip and stuff. Yeah. But you don't really understand, like watching it as a child, you don't understand the racial sort of undertones, not even undertones at this point, just the blatant racism that's happening. Yeah. In front of you as you're watching it. You're just like, oh, this guy is going on an adventure. He's exploring caves and running from boulders and killing Nazis. So you're not in the mind frame, especially as a child, to like really understand what you're looking at, other than just what you're being seen or what you're consuming at face value, which is just really just the action and things of that nature. So and especially given the fact that Indiana Jones, like the series, is kind of like a cult classic. It's it's not great. And And that it's important to really like call things out like this because
Yeah.
these movies are still widely circulated, you know, and if you don't understand what you're looking at, you're just going to be like, oh, well, all people from that culture do those things, right? You think that Indians eat monkeys and fried bugs, and that's not even the case at all. Have you had the Indian food? It's fucking delicious, you know. Like,
No,
Yeah.
and I think like we're at like a all-time record low, especially like even there in the 80s of like tribes in the world. Like there are still like some Amazonian tribes, you know, there's like some island. We just saw that was in the news not too long ago to where like, you know, you come up on it, they're gonna shoot you with arrows, bro. Like there are a few of those, but like
yeah,
the way that Indiana Jones depicts certain areas was just like, oh, they're still just living, you know, like tribal, right? Like, and it's just like, nah, that's not always the case. And so, like, I can see why some people would definitely have beef with it. It's crazy that it was banned. I never knew that, like, because of the racist or the insensitive material in it, right? Like, it's one of those where, like, you know, just here in America, it's like it's Indiana Jones, bro, and the Temple of Doom. It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
Definitely one that leaves a sour taste in your mouth after a little bit of time. But one of them that is sometimes even tougher to revisit, but still frequently is Friends, Frasier, How I Met Your Mother, sitcoms. Dude, tell us a little bit about this, Kevin. We got a lot of sitcoms here at number 8 in our countdown of things that didn't age well.
Yeah. So for me, I was a big How I Met Your Mother fan at the time. And I didn't really understand. I was very ignorant to. I mean, I understood like basic misogyny, but I didn't understand it and how like its full complexity. Not even just its complexity, just how deep rooted it can go. Yeah. Like one of the characters, Barney, who is a huge womanizer. I mean, the man literally has a playbook on how to trick women into sleeping with you and then never seeing or calling them again. And it's thought of as like comedic, you know, and he's funny. Yeah. He's the comic relief of the show, and the butt of the jokes isn't Barney, but the women that he's kind of sleeping with, you know, because he ultimately succeeds in his quote unquote conquest for, you know, for hooking up with women, all the time, really. Like he literally made a list. I forget what the number was, but it was very alarming. And at one point, you start to see towards the end, the show, like the character shifts a little bit more towards getting away with that. But it's hard to watch at times. Even the main character, Ted, supposed to be like this, you know, hopeless romantic, really just he kind of manipulative in his own right. He's kind of like the, oh no, things just kind of happen to me, but doesn't really take accountability for his shitty actions. And that one was kind of hard to grasp. I really loved How I Met Your Mother. I thought the writing was great. I thought it was a brilliant idea. And I mean, granted, at the time it's 2005, and we're not making excuses for this anymore. But it's just it's pretty disappointing. And as far as like Friends and Frasier is concerned, Friends has never really held up to me. Not even just from the fact that, you know, from all the misogyny, the homophobia, many of other things, even their jokes. Friends isn't really that funny to me, so I don't really give a damn about Friends. And same with Frasier. You know, just fuck Kelsey Grammer. He's racist too, so that should tell you everything you need to know about Frasier.
The smartest show on television, my ass.
Right, because sitcoms to me are like filler shows. Like it has to be a really great sitcom where I'll just sit down and have to pay attention to it. But for the most part, they're just in the background while I'm eating or doing other stuff, cleaning the apartment. Where are you guys at on all this?
No, I agree. I've watched a lot of some of these 90s sitcoms, and a lot of the tropes where they decided to put the butt of the jokes. With 2020 hindsight, it does get pretty cringy in some episodes. And I think that when you make, you know, I don't know how many episodes, Friends at like 200 plus episodes. Yeah. I think that, you get away with having one or two slightly problematic episodes. But when you go back and rewatch them, I definitely think that, you know, these should be looked at with 2020 vision.
Yeah.
Keep on using that pun.
No, like I mean, it's 100%. A lot of these sitcoms, like like you're saying, Kev, it's kind of like they're almost a product of their age, right? Like that's why this is the list of things that haven't aged well. And so it's like Friends at its time was everyone's favorite show. There's a reason why they paid every one of those beautiful white people almost $1 million an episode at one point, right? And so or I think it was over $1 million. I think it was like $2 million episode per person. That means they were paying Joey and Phoebe $2 million an episode when they had Jennifer Aniston on that fucking cast. So like it's insane to think that they were getting paid the same as Aniston. But anyway, that's just my like little side hot take on Friends. But like no, it hasn't aged well. Home Improvement's another one that didn't age well. Married with Children. Oh my God, like it's so funny and it's ahead of its time in so many ways, but then also right with its time in so many ways as well. Yeah. And so sitcoms are a huge one that like, if it's not like a Modern Family these days, it did not hold up, right? And even Modern Family may have some problems 20 years from now. We'll see.
And what's weird to me is like How I Met Your Mother was at its time kind of progressive, or at least they were trying to be. But they just like really missed the ball on one sort of key part on that,
They weren't too far ahead of their time. They were maybe a little bit ahead of their time, caught up with their time, and then aged out.
That'll happen
pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, let's go back even a decade further and talk about some 80s classics, because coming in at number 7, we're talking about some 80s classics here. We're talking about Revenge of the Nerds, Animal House, Heathers, even more. Jake, tell us why these come in at number 7 on our countdown.
Yeah. And we kind of lumped a few in here, but the big one that I'm going to talk about is Revenge of the Nerds, because this is Geek Life. Why not? You're all fucking nerds for watching this. Many admired this film for, helping nerds feel seen in Hollywood, because for once they weren't reduced to just a stereotypical side character or the butt of every joke, which I think is huge. Like if we look at it now in 2020, nerd culture is pretty much popular culture at this point, right? And so for a movie like The Revenge of the Nerds, it was seen as like, oh my God, this is cutting edge. Look at all these losers that are the main characters. But unfortunately, many feel that this movie also left behind a disturbing legacy due to the rape culture, racism, and homophobia that it films throughout the film and throughout the sequels to the film as well. One nerd, Lewis, tricks a woman named Becky into having sex with him by stealing her boyfriend's Halloween costume and pretending he is the man that she thought she was having consensual sex with. Or rape by deception is another word for that. And the nerds also sell her nudes eventually, which was a huge one. And like many other 80s films, the Asian characters can barely speak English or literally are only there to propagate some sort of stereotype and be made the butt of many jokes. And on top of that, many say the character Lamar is written with a lot of overly feminine gay stereotypes, and they use him as the punchline a lot as well. And it's not, just like normal punchlines in any way. The butt of the joke is him being gay, right? And so this is, like Animal House is a huge one too, where people thought like, oh, look, it depicts us. We're the losers, we're the little like the counterculture in a way, because it's like always the nerdy, scruffy kind of like crazy kids going against like the big bully kids. But at the end of the day, they're all white males and they're all super rapey and racist. Like, there's like no racial diversity within their groups pretty much. And so, and a lot of these films also depict pretty much what's the other, like stalking. And they like hype it up. Pretty in Pink, Breakfast Club. A lot of those like your early 80s rom-coms essentially say, men, if you want a girl, you got to hunt her down.
Right, you gotta stand outside her house with a boombox. That's stalking, guys. That is I mean, and it's not like, okay.
Some of them are subtle, right? Like, some of it's small stuff, but then a lot of it, like there's grooming, like, there's like 16 Candles somebody just threw out. Like, I think that's a huge one. That's like, this is a grown ass man essentially like talking to a 15-year-old and like, helping her like become a woman. Like that's fucking weird, bro. Like the 80s were definitely a different time. So like, but looking back at it, but like, I don't know. But speaking of nerds, Dodd might have the biggest group of angry ones coming up after number 6 on the list.
Yeah, I got a hot take for you guys here. Number 6 on this countdown is Ace Ventura, the 90s classic. And Ace Ventura is often remembered fondly, but the movie's incredibly transphobic, okay? The climax of the film is based around the revelation that the main female antagonist is actually a man. And not only that, the revelation comes after Ace strips her in front of a crowd of cops with guns drawn. Once the reaction from the cops displays an almost cartoonish trans panic with disgusted reactions. It also displays disgusting views of misogyny. I mean, like literally, the cop stood there while he was like stripping every bit of her down. It's like, oh, but if she was a man, then she wouldn't have these, and strips off her shirt, and then oh, but she wouldn't have this, and it like literally, he's degrading her in front of police. Like that's what's happening there, and they're doing it for comedy. The character Einhorn is also written in a really harmful way. The antagonist that we're talking about is an escaped mental patient. She's seen as crazy, deranged, disgusting, inherently evil. Ace also discovers Einhorn is trans after he had relations with Einhorn. And when that happens, he like made out with Einhorn, and when he finds that out, he goes through this big cartoonish routine where he like takes a shower, like burns his clothes, and like plunges his face, vomits in the toilet, and does all these stuff. And the reason I wanted to bring it up in Ace Ventura is because like that kind of humor, especially homophobic, transphobic humor, was very popular in the 90s. It was something that people could get away with a lot in the 90s. But queer panic and trans panic is actually a real thing, and in most places it's legally protected murder. And what I mean by that is in many states, panic laws give legal protection for people to assert the right of self-defense in the instance that someone makes an unwanted advance towards them. This law has been grossly distorted to justify hate crimes against LGBTQIA individuals. Individuals have used laws like this to murder trans individuals upon the realization that they are trans. This was a movie that many kids saw as a child and perpetuated inherent transphobia, inherent, kind of disgustingness towards like the fact of the matter is Ace's reaction towards finding out Einhorn was trans was naturally disgust. And so kids growing up seeing that go, okay, trans people are disgusting, and making those kind of assumptions, and making assumptions that like these big cartoonish reactions where he's burning his clothes and things like that are justified. And that gets dangerously close to the things that are actually literally killing trans people. So I know it's a tough one to be able to I understand it's a tough one to really be able to talk about, but it's got a little bit of again, this was something that was widely accepted in the 90s, but it's something that definitely it's hard to watch now, to be honest. Kev, what do you think about this?
Yeah, no, I mean, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, where a lot of what you see of the world is through a lens of the information you consume. And a lot of the information we consume is through entertainment. So if you're seeing someone treat someone who's trans like this, you're going to think that, oh, that's acceptable. That's what you're supposed to do. And therefore, not only would you think that's acceptable, but you'll think of what the person being trans as being unacceptable, right? Like that's the other thing. It does two things. It makes someone's identity, or makes a person, a group of people, or, they should be condemned. The list goes on. And therefore, anything that goes against those people, violence, hate speech, whatever, that's okay. That's essentially, and that enables that. And then now it enables it, like you said, through like the sort of the cartoonish lens of comedy and entertainment, where it's like, ha, it's funny because, this person's trans. It's okay. And you enable people like that, especially when you're young and impressionable. Like I remember when I saw Ace Ventura, I was a child, I didn't think anything at the time was wrong with it because I was a child. I didn't understand what I was looking at. And it's much more nuanced than that, but you don't get that. You don't understand that. And especially when you don't have, like you said, the 2020 lens of being able to go and look at it for what it was.
Yeah. With some sort of empathy towards trans people in general.
It's
Jake,
crazy
you got thoughts?
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy to watch it back, especially now, because like like you were saying, Kev, this is one of those that I grew up on in the '90s, and it was just like, of course, like a man turning himself into a woman or like looking like a woman just to like trick all these guys, like, and then like, oh, he kissed him, oh, icky, like all those kind of like things. That was the '90s kid kind of like that's just like it was ingrained in the culture at that period, and so it's crazy how like far we've really came to where like we're looking back at like 1994 Jim Carrey and saying like, should we cancel this? Like, is this the is Ace Ventura one that we should go ahead and like throw the like put the cleats away? Like, is it because it's classics with The Mask, Liar Liar, like all those big 90s films that Carrey came out with that I think like his catalog's pretty impressive. I think we all I think this is a movie that is near and dear to a lot of people. I don't think the first thing they think of is transphobia, and so like it is important to kind of like at least bring it up, talk about it. That way that people at least think about it, do it again. And if not, like it'll just definitely give people something to think about in the future whenever they see this kind of representation too. And I think it's definitely something that's important to bring up because, like I said, like I don't think many people even realized it.
No, I didn't. I for sure until Dodd brought it up. I had no idea. I was like, "Wait, really?" And then even you, I think you said Dodd, like, "Oh, I don't think it's that bad." And then you watched it, like, "Oh my god."
No, I moved it up on the list after watching the scene because I went through and I actually watched the scene again. Like, is that really the plot of the movie? And then sure enough, they really treat transgenderism as a kind of corporate heist excuse. Like, or they're glossing over the fact that this person completely changed their sexuality when this transition happened too. That has nothing to do with the heist that was going on,
and it completely lays it out there that this is just like a lifestyle choice that like Finkel woke up one morning and was like, to get back at Dan Marino, I'm just going to become a woman. You know what I mean? And like, and it's like, I don't think that's ever happened in the history of ever. Like, I don't think, many people, there is so many things that have, that'll like, just by coming out as trans, you put yourself at such a high risk of violent, crime, all these other things that it's not something that I think many people would just wake up one morning and go, yeah, I'm going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, and so it is one of those that definitely makes you think. And that's why it's number 4 on the countdown.
Well,
I mean, number 6.
Number 6.
My bad.
Yes, number 6. You're jumping ahead. Number 5 on our countdown is going to be The Office and Parks and Rec. Tell us why these make our countdown, Kevin.
Boy. Yeah, so The Office, for me, I loved The Office when I was in college, and I think that's because it really romanticized, which I guess, think about it, kind of did it. Office culture, working on, like, oh man, I can't wait to sit at a cubicle all day, and you actually do it. I'm like, well, this sucks. But that's not the real reason anymore. It's first off, Michael Scott, the main character, is very problematic. His character in the show is flawed. And he's flawed on purpose because it's the whole point of the show. He basically is The Office in a way. But his flaws are problematic because, for instance, he's had issues with misogyny, racial issues, homophobia. There was an episode called Women's Appreciation where Phyllis gets flashed in a parking lot. In an attempt to be funny, Michael makes a day even worse by pretending to flash his entire staff with his fingers sticking out of his pants unzipped, saying it was a penis. And then he also, to sort of save face, he takes all the women in the office to Victoria's Secret. There's also the racial issues, the Diversity Day episode where that one was really bad. It started off with his infamous Chris Rock routine. And essentially just really pushing the boundaries of some terrible racial stereotypes within the office. And then probably the biggest one, the most known one, is the homophobia, the episode where Oscar is gay, where he actually didn't come out. Michael came out for him, so to speak. Basically just in an unwieldy way of words, if you will, accidentally essentially tells the entire office that Oscar is gay in front of everybody, and then to prove he supports him, forces a kiss on him against Oscar's will. I know why it's problematic. It's one of those things where they try to get away, or they kind of get away with it with some people because that's just who Michael is. Like, oh, he's just dumb, he's ignorant. But at the same time, a lot of people don't see that. They're just like, ha ha ha! Look at these people being the butt of jokes, who are oppressed, suffer on a daily basis through life.
Yeah. Yeah. No. 100%.
Guys, like, how do you feel about The Office? Not just like, I mean, in general, but just
and especially those first couple episodes. I rewatched them recently with my partner when going through some of them, and I was like, oh yeah, there was definitely some episodes like, ooh, yeah, this came out at a different time. The episode, especially with Oscar, like, that is harassment. That's outing someone at work. I mean, like, I can't imagine. Anyways, stuff like that just would absolutely not be acceptable in today's day and age, even as something to joke about. So I think that is I think that it's good to look at this in 2020 vision. It's good to say, hey, The Office is great, but some of those episodes at the beginning, they did not age well, for sure.
Yeah. No, and it's a huge. There is a lot of shows that have like even changed when they went to streaming. We saw 30 Rock, even at the request of Tina Fey, pull some of the black-faced episodes because they were just like, they're insensitive. They were from a different time period where I guess we thought that was funny. Yeah, no, they did. Yeah, and it wasn't even Peacock. No one from corporate requested it. Tina Fey did. Tina Fey stood up as the creator of the show and said, we did that at a different time. It was inappropriate then. It's inappropriate now. Like, and we want them off of the show, right? And so, like, it's interesting to go back and watch some of these kind of like, comedy shows like 30 Rock, Parks and Rec, The Office especially, like you said, the Oscar episode. Holy shit, man! You couldn't make that one right now just because of how just crazily insensitive that episode is, and a lot of them, because like it's the butt of the joke is Oscar's sexuality, right? At the end of the day, like if you strip it all away, like people can try to dress it up as much as they want to and try to say like, oh, but it's in the sake of comedy. They even made it look inappropriate in the show and things like that. Like, nah. At the end of the day, like the joke was that he was gay. How's that funny? You know what I mean? Like that's just like, so that's why it didn't age well, and that's why it's number 5 on the countdown, right? Yeah.
Moving right along, though, number 4 on the countdown is a little bit early this year, but it is A Christmas Story. Tell us a little bit why A Christmas Story is number 4 on the countdown, Jake.
Oh, man. I personally wanted to do this entire countdown just so I could talk about The Christmas Story real quick. This is a hot holiday take, and it's coming right at you, so buckle up if you're one of the people that watch A Christmas Story every year as it's on loop, right? This one might affect my personal life, as this is a classic that's on repeat every Christmas in my parents' house, my girlfriend's parents' house, and pretty much every parent's house across the United States. I went from never seeing this movie as a kid to seeing it probably 50 to 100 times in my life at this point. I can literally quote, like, I think we all remember the scene, the thing busts open, fragile, it must be Italian or whatever. So like there's all this like kind of like, it has a nostalgia trigger with folks, right? But and probably most of you know what scene I'm going to talk about. It's the Chinese restaurant. The Chinese restaurant scene is without a doubt one of the most hardest things to sit through, and the fact that they still show it on the television version, which is cut for time, by the way. They've already cut some shit out of this movie by the time they put it on PBS for commercials and everything, and they don't cut this super racist Chinese restaurant scene out, and I don't get that. If you can even sit through the whole Deck the Halls thing, you're just like, you feel gross watching it, right? Yeah. But that's not even all, right? It's Reagan era nostalgia that's rooted in consumerism. Ralphie's highlights are literally getting a gun and beating up a bully. That's like what it's trying to teach kids. His favorite 2 things in the holiday were his mom being spacey as fuck, his dad being pretty much borderline abusive, and him beating up a bully and getting a gun so that he could shoot things, right? Like that's his like favorite things. That's the highlights of the movie for Ralphie.
Yeah, Reagan would be proud of that.
In my opinion, it
It's a
doesn't even
super
have
Reagan
Christmas
movie.
spirit, right? Like being a good
That's true.
person can be hard. Caring about others makes you vulnerable. Having hopes leaves you open to disappointment. But regret, the holiday spirit is about lowering these defenses and being kind to one another, feeling some joy, allowing yourself to believe, if even for one night, that the world is a good place. And the Christmas Carol is about this. A Charlie Brown Christmas is about this. It's a Wonderful Life is about this. Bad Santa is about this. Die Hard is about this. Okay. But A Christmas Story is about children in pain, making fun of people who are different, and learning that life is a series of crushing disappointments. So, like, like,
Oh,
how
man.
is this a Christmas movie that we all love? Like, I don't get it. Like, and I don't think it has not aged well, in my opinion. But that's just a hot take, and it may just be a hot take in my house. But Dodd, what do you guys feel about it?
I mean, when you lay it all out like that, you make a pretty good case, man. The Reaganomics of it is scary just to begin with. The Chinese dinner scene is pretty bad. It is awful, absolutely awful. Not just pretty bad; it's terrible.
Yeah.
And then the high level takeaways. Even if you didn't have those two things, even if you have an edited version of it, it's still shitty. You know, it's still the high level takeaways
of Christmas. Yeah.
Not at all. Not at all. So
anytime that Bad Santa and Die Hard do a better representation of Christmas than you're not in a great company there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Dodd, you may have the hottest take on this list, even hotter than my Christmas hot take. Can you tell us what we got at number 3 on the list?
All right. Number 3 is Harry fucking Potter, because I never miss a chance to dunk on J.K. Rowling on this show. Not today.
I didn't quite hear you. Could you please repeat what you said?
Siri thought I was talking to her. That's a little scary. I need to check to see if my phone's a turf after this. Harry Potter was beloved by fans for generations. People lined up at the bookstores. Remember when bookstores were a thing? For each new novel in the series, the movies were even bigger. The World of Witchcraft and Wizardry even got the Universal Studio treatment. The series is still making money through new video games and a failed Pokemon Go ripoff, but there's one thing that has started to bring down the entertainment giant, and that is J.K. Rowling. For those of you who haven't heard me constantly dunk on J.K. Rowling for her turf trash, here's the TLDR. J.K. Rowling is a TERF, or a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. They believe that trans women are just men in dresses, and that they're trying to encroach on female-only spaces in order to do harm. It's a mentality that paints trans people as perverted criminals. At first, the radical nature of her beliefs was kind of suspect. We didn't know. It was kind of like, she said some kind of turfish stuff, but we don't know for sure. It started out with her liking some few edgy tweets. Then it came to full-on retweets, and then it came to full-throated transphobic statements. I mean, she's repeatedly doubled down after this. She wrote a new book about it where she has the main antagonist as a man in a dress who goes out and kills cis women. She's even retweeted merchandise, TERF propaganda merchandise that proudly embraces the moniker transphobe. Not only that, Robbie Coltrane, who played Hagrid, and Eddie Redmayne, the dude from Fantastic Beasts, have defended J.K. Rowling against the latest in her latest accusations of transphobia, arguing that critics simply hang around wanting to be offended, and Eddie calling fans nasty for holding her accountable. For transgender Harry Potter fans, this is a tough break, okay? Rowling's increase of vocalization of her TERF views is incredibly damaging, and it's hard to look at the series the same. Some may argue that this is a case of separating the art from the artist. But this one, I say, it's a little bit harder just to do so because J.K. Rowling's not dead. She's still talking about this stuff. We already know that she's in the past tried to, retcon elements of her stories to make them more interesting, but we know that she did not have the queer community in mind at all when she came up with these things and has only continued to do damage since. And you just don't want to support anything that supports J.K. Rowling's IP, in my opinion. Every time I see anything Harry Potter related, I think of J.K. Rowling now and what she's doing. And some of this backlash we see it even in the new Harry Potter game. I mean, Sony had to come out and say that J.K. Rowling is not directly affected or benefited from the new Harry Potter game that's coming out, just so some people will buy it, because people were outraged that people were still supporting this renowned transphobe. What do you guys think about this? Are you guys as heated about J.K. Rowling as I am, Kevin?
Yeah, I feel kind of, a little betrayed. Like, I loved Harry Potter and everything. It's like, it's one of these things like, oh man, why do you have to suck so bad? Like, why do you have to create such great, like, why do you have to create cool shit, but then you're just an awful person? Like, why do I have to constantly continue to do this, And I know people say, well, why can't you separate the two? The reason you can't do that is because one of them has real life consequences and implications for people. The other one is just fantasy. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it exists or not. Yeah, so I was super bummed about it. At first, I didn't understand what was going on. I had to I remember she was trending on Twitter. I was like, wow, what did J.K. Rowling do now? I thought it was just her her bullshit again, but she really went in and trying to die.
She dug her heels in,
doubled down.
She said, "This is the hill I've chosen to die on." And this is the turf hill that I've decided that I'm gonna die on, and it's actually insane to me. And it's funny because it brought up a huge conversation, like we were saying earlier, and just amongst us at Geeklife around like the artist. Do you separate the two? Kind of like what else is canceled because it was created by somebody shitty? Because I personally was like, okay, is there anything problematic within Harry Potter? Right? Like, because, we were looking at, did the media not age well? Right. And so from our conversation, it was like, well, this is why this one's an outlier, because the media, like, besides from some shitty representation overall, it is mostly white folks. But then again, I guess it is set in Britain. So whatever. Mm-hmm. But like, besides that, the media has actually held up okay. Like the story overall still great. Like you said, it's the universe that JK kind of built is fantastic, and we've built on it. We've made even more movies, more books, more things. It has its whole theme park and Universal that's a shit ton of fun to go to, by the way. And so now they finally got this RPG style wizard video game that's coming out that I think people have been wanting for years, right? And so and then all of this. And then JK comes in and is like, "Oh yeah, but I'm a piece of shit." and so it's just oh my god, this one's such a tough one, and it's one that I think a lot of fans are gonna, try to either explain their way out of it, or they're gonna finally I guess cancel JK and Harry Potter in general, which is it's interesting, man. It's definitely one that I think is interesting. And I love how PlayStation 5, I love how this gaming studio has been trying to distance themselves so hard. They did a press release, homie. When a company comes out and does a press release that's like, JK has nothing to do with this. I think if they would have if JK Rowling would release a statement that says, I'm not going to make $1 from this video game, I think people would actually pay for it, right? And go and buy it because they love Harry Potter. They love the IP, right? And so it's just one of those things where I think it's still a beloved IP, but oh man, dude, the fact that she's still going to make a shitload of money off this stuff, it's definitely,
As Chat was saying in there, you can't separate the artist from the artist, the art from the artist in this case, because the artist is still alive and the artist still profits from it directly. It's kind of it's kind of hard to do that when you know that it's still going to be lining J.K. Rowling's pockets. It's supporting the artist in some way, shape, or form. So I think that. But you know me, never miss an opportunity to dunk on J.K. Rowling on this show. Number 2 on the countdown as we start to get closer.
We're going to talk about as many pissed off fans.
Just as many pissed off fans, because we're talking about Disney classics like Dumbo, Peter Pan, and Jungle Book. Ooh, hitting them right in the heart spot there, Kevin.
Tell us nostalgia right now.
So I'm here to ruin your childhood and kill your dreams. All your Disney classics that you know and love are inherently racist. In some cases, blatantly racist. We'll go with the first one. We're not even go after the low hanging fruit. We'll go through. How about not transforming black leads into, I don't know, animals throughout the entire movie. This happened with Tiana and the Prince of the Frog, Cusco and the Emperor's New Groove, and Kenai and Brothers Bears, where the characters are of color and spend majority of the time transformed into animals until they can figure out how to be human again. The undertone there doesn't really just speak white supremacy to you. I don't know what will. How about King Louie from the Jungle Book, who who was the king of the apes and famously tells Mowgli, the human protagonist, that I want to be like you. And you're like, oh, that sounds interesting. An ape wants to be like a human. Interesting. Where have we heard those racial tones before? Oh, I don't know. Usually black people racially being referred to as apes. The characters even speak jive slang, and every other character speaks perfect British English. The apes themselves embody historically dehumanizing and racist comparisons between black people and, like I mentioned before, and apes. There's the Jim Crow crows and Dumbo. The list goes on and on. I could throw a rock at some sort of racial trope in any Disney movie at this point. Not even just race. Then there's the homophobia in the Lion King and Aladdin, where again, and even in Little Mermaid again, where you have the main antagonist either being depicted as villainous or mean or terrible, and then being and clearly being queer as an identity, and then always essentially having to play the villain.
Yeah, that's been a huge one in Disney movies.
Yeah, they're all the villains are queer. If you're and
the queer coded villains like Jafar, Ursula, like a lot of them, like I never realized that until I took a college class where somebody brought it up one time in a debate, and I was like, holy fuck. It was like it just like started rolling in where I was like, oh my God, they do have so many Disney villains that are like kind of like they're either feminine men or masculine females, and they're always the villain, right?
If you had
so
to guess, right? Yeah, it's a very clear trope that they always do. But to be fair, though, they have given us a lot of great costume ideas for Pride and things like that. I mean, I've seen some really good, well done, bedazzled Jafars before. You'd be surprised. So There is some pros and cons there, but for the most part, they've always depicted queer people in general as villainous or deranged. And again, that's just the sprinkle on top of all the racist tropes that they have in there as well. So,
in his defense, Walt Disney was a known anti-Semite, and I guess that's not a defense, but that's what he was.
No, Kevin. I think what you meant to say is, in his defense, Walt Disney did win a medal from the Nazis. Oh wait, no, that's not the one we wanted either. I don't.
Okay. Yeah.
And
context matters.
Context does matter.
It really does. And if you need any more examples, another one that I thought of immediately was they had redone the Lady and the Tramp, right? And they made it the live action Lady and the Tramp. They instead of the Siamese cats, now it was two rapping cats, which I was just like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, you guys, like, just make them cats, bro.
Right.
Like, now they're cool cats, the jive, you know what I mean? And it's just like, holy fuck, dude.
Could they not have like a Dave Matthews Band cat or something?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Something that's not going to piss off anybody.
The same thing. For some reason, every time there's a Siamese cat, they're just like, they have a very like classic, racist Chinese accent, and it's just, oh my God. A lot of these haven't aged well.
Jake, sorry, hold on. I don't want to cut off Kevin. What did you say?
Oh no, I was just really just hammering on this, agreeing with what Jake's saying. Yeah.
All right, Jake, bring us home. What's number one in this countdown?
Yeah, number one on the countdown of things that have not aged well is Fox News downplaying COVID.
Oh God.
You heard me right. Wash your hands, you filthy animals, and wear a mask and stand 6 feet back for this hot take. Well, it's really not that hot whenever you think about it. Early on,
Not at
Fox
all.
News, aka the only channel that your grandparents play 24/7, has played a huge role in downplaying the COVID-19 pandemic. Sean Hannity, the Fox and Friends game, Tucker Carlson, all have been quoted throughout this pandemic downplaying the severity of the virus. Now it's running through the Republican Party like a gender reveal caused fire in California. We're sitting at over 200,000 dead. The president's tested positive and is sitting in the hospital. The most important of all is that Cam Newton tested positive and ruined my fantasy football weekend.
Roll time.
It's just it's been insane. And so the fact that Fox News played a huge role early on and pretty much giving misinformation to a large majority of Americans, by the way. Like, Fox News is the #1 watched cable channel in the US, I believe. And so it's one of those things where, like, this, over the past, since March, essentially, they've talked about how this isn't that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. And then we've just watched as the death count has increased. And now we've watched as even our, the leader of the free world, the television actor Donald Trump, who is also the president, is now positive for COVID-19. And it's just like, I didn't realize Karma was going to be making a visit in 2020. But I don't know if we have finally hit peak 2020. Dotson, Kevin, do you guys think we'll ever get to play outside again? And how do you feel about Fox News downplaying COVID-19 being #1 on the list of things that just did not well?
Kevin, I'll give it to you first.
Yeah, play outside again. Probably not. That's what brought me back to NBA 2K21, knowing that I will never play basketball with other individuals again unless I'm trying to be up out of here, coach. Yeah, it's boy, them downplay. It's really been annoying. Just having to deal with the bullshit of them not only just downplaying the virus, but then you see all like the run of the mill conspiracy theories about it's 5G. It's the Democrats doing a global pandemic, by the way, that not only affected America because they wanted to meddle in American politics or undermine the president, who now has COVID-19 as well as his other constituents. It's been the ultimate shit show, and somehow hold me to my word. He's gonna somehow flip this in his favor. Not even like conspiracy theory out the window. He's gonna come out of this and then promote some bullshit drug like I had the best recovery, the greatest recovery ever. The best drug. Hydroxychloroquine was the miracle drug. It saves everybody. They don't want you to have it. It's great. No one wants it, but you need bleach. That kind of bullshit. Yeah, right. Drink some bleach. It's fine. It's really low-hanging fruit at this point to make fun of people like that.
I know. I think that's why SNL took such a long hiatus. It did come back this Saturday. We didn't cover it this on TV. We'll probably cover it next week because it has been a cool thing. I watched it this morning too.
Oh my god.
Jim Carrey as Biden was great, but like it's just so funny how they essentially danced around that elephant in the room of Donald Trump testing positive for most of the episode. Yeah. And so like well, because it's so crazy that we've finally made this full circle, because it was mostly like, conservatives and Fox News who basically were like, it's not that bad, it's not that bad. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Kevin. If everything goes well, and I think it will, because he's the president of the United States, he's getting some kind of experimental drugs we probably never fucking heard of, right? They have him at Area 51 on a spaceship that's actively like healing him right now.
Yeah. So he's getting Mewtwo's DNA injected straight in his
exactly, bro. There is a blood boy right now that is just like giving Donald Trump all of the healthy blood.
A blood bank on the top of on the front of Trump's motorcade.
Yes, exactly. Oh but God. No, that's why this is #1 on the countdown. Is that things are it's not getting any better, but Fox News has downplayed it since the beginning, and it has definitely not aged well.
That is some piping hot tea.